I'm an irrelevant fantasy and I have some thoughts that I want to get out of my head. That's really the purpose of this channel. This is my first video on this channel. I've decided to begin with a subject that is near and dear to my heart, and that is gender diversity. There are a lot of opinions, and that's good. That's great. You are absolutely entitled to your own thoughts and opinions. You can say whatever you want to say. The thing, though, is that if you're going to comment on a subject, it's really important to understand that subject. More importantly, if you're going to disagree, you need to make sure that you're disagreeing with things that people are actually saying. It frustrates me to no end when people argue against points that no one is even making in the first place. So that's what this is about. This is a list of 5 myths that I see far too often that are not reflective of anything, which means they're not contributing to the conversation at all. They are derailing it. They are making it harder to actually have a conversation, and that is a problem. So let's dive into it with 5 myths about gender diversity. The first myth I want to address is this term transgender ideology. What is transgender ideology? Nobody knows. Because it's not a thing that exists at all. I mean, yes, of course, we all have our own ideology, our own views and opinions on the subject. As with any other subject, you're going to have varying perspectives, but there is no unifying, consistent ideology that we all subscribe to. It's not some sales pitch that we've all bought into. We're all just trying to understand our own experiences and how to best navigate the world. For reference as to what I'm talking about, here we have an article published by the Wall Street Journal on February 13th, 2020. The authors are Colin M. Wright and Emma N. Hilton, and the very first word in the article is transgender ideology. They go on to explain why it is stupid and bad and dumb and harmful, and don't really delve into what it is. The article is actually an absolute treasure trove of just really bad takes on the subject. Yeah, this is, So allow me, gentle viewer, to give my personal ideology when it comes to gender diversity. I stress that it is just my personal ideology, and that of course everyone has their own thoughts and opinions, which is great. Everybody should have different ideas. That is a very important thing. Express and discuss and critique, that is all good things. So this is how I look at gender. It is a survival instinct. To give a very, very quick overview of what a survival instinct is, eating, as an example. You see delicious, tasty food and your brain is like, ooh, you should go eat the delicious, tasty food. And if you don't eat enough food, then you feel hungry. But when you do eat the delicious, tasty food, it is delicious and tasty. Another example would be sleep. You are tired, you see a bed, your brain is like, oh, please go lie down in that bed. Please, is a thing that your brain will do. And if you don't get enough sleep, you feel tired. If you are a human who has experienced sleep at some point, you probably know that it is lovely to have a really good sleep. So what does this have to do with gender? Well, eating and sleeping are things that if you don't do them, you'll die. But there are other things that need to happen that won't necessarily kill an individual, but if they don't happen enough within a species, that species will die off. I'm talking about reproductive instincts, mating instincts, and there are 4 things. 4 that I want you to remember. These 4 behaviors are essential for reproduction. Number 1, an animal has to be able to recognize a potential mate. In order for that to happen, number 2 is that they have to self-identify for a potential mate. Hi, hey, this is me. Number 3 is they have to know what to do when they find each other. Earmuffs, children, I'm talking about grown-up alone time. And then number 4 is parenting. Parenting instincts are real and influence human behavior, but they don't affect everyone in quite the same way. You talk to some parents, they'll tell you that when their child was born, it was like a blazing sun came to life inside of them, and their whole worldview shifted around this precious little life. And then other parents, I mean, they're good parents, they love their children, but it's more of a warm glow. And then there are parents who just don't. Who knows? Back to item number 1 on our list, recognition. It is an objective fact that some people on this planet find men to be attractive, and Some people on this planet find women to be attractive, and some people are attracted to both. Some people have no time for any of that business. Look, it's all very complicated. The point is that everyone's different. So what I'm proposing about gender identity is it's really items number 2 and 3 on our list. Simply the need to self-identify. Some people feel a strong need to be recognized as a man. Some people feel a strong need to be recognized as a woman. Some people feel both or some combination. Some people don't appreciate being recognized by gender at all. And it's really important to respect that. And how do you actually tell a person's gender identity? Well, you ask them. For the same reason that you know someone has a headache or that they're feeling sick, is that you ask them, because they're the only ones who know what they're experiencing. But wait, you might be shouting at your screen. I heard somewhere that gender is a social construct. And, well, yeah. What do you think social constructs are for? A cheeseburger is a social construct. A bed is a social construct. The number of social constructs built up around parenting are legion. Every one of our survival needs has a myriad of social constructs attached to them. So yeah, naturally gender is gonna have a lot of social constructs. Humans are weird, crazy, complicated creatures. The point of all of this isn't necessarily to firmly convince you of my own opinions. That's a lot more than I really have time for in item number 1 of a 5-item list. The point I'm trying to get across here is that our beliefs are based on things that exist in the real world. It's not just fantasy, and it's not simple ideology. Okay, I promise the rest of the items on this list aren't going to be quite so long-winded. Item number 2, the reality of biological sex. So I've seen this a lot recently, and what? Yeah, people are out there arguing that biological sex is real. Going back to our lovely Wall Street Journal post, they spend a lot of time on this point. In fact, earlier when I said that they don't really explain what transgender ideology is, I think maybe that's what they think it is. I don't know. It's very much a water is wet kind of position to hold. That is to say, nobody's really disagreeing with you. That's not what we think. Of course, biological sex is real. It's why we're here. I'm kind of offended that you think I don't think that. I think what it is people who are, shall we say, antagonistic towards gender diversity have this idea that gender and biological sex are the same thing. They are not. Item number 3. Trans people are trying to fundamentally change who and what we are. This is definitely one of the most common arguments that you are going to come across. Oh, you can't change your chromosomes, and you can't change your reproductive function, and just because you identify as an attack helicopter doesn't mean that you can float around shooting missiles. Just because you identify as a Tyrannosaurus Rex, if you go around eating people, the police are going to take a real negative view on that. I identify as a semicolon. I identify as a fire hydrant, and on. And it's... Transition is about accepting who you are and showing it to the world. I am absolutely 100% guilty of trying to fundamentally change who and what I am. I spent 35 years in the closet trying to do that. I was about 8 years old or so when I made the decision that I was going to be a boy. I definitely had the biological sex for it. And over the coming years, I became increasingly motivated to not be trans. The world is very hostile towards gender nonconformity. That is not an opinion, that is absolute fact. If you don't agree with that, it's because you're not paying any attention. I worked very, very hard to be what the world expected me to be, and it started to become a problem. When I eventually came out, it was to finally be honest with the world. This is me, this is who I am, this is who I've always been, and I don't like it, but I couldn't change it. Item number 4. Trans people just want to cheat. And mostly here I'm talking about sports, but you see this in other subjects. The thing about sports is that they are by nature very emotionally charged. And the idea of somebody having an unfair advantage is a really big deal. But here's the thing. There are much better ways to cheat at sports than transitioning. Lance Armstrong was able to cheat just fine, and he did not have to transition. There is a lot going on here, and not really what I want to dive into for the purpose of this video, except to say that trans people really aren't doing all that well in sports, and it's because it's an incredibly hostile environment for us. Even if we win, people hate us for it, so why? And finally, item number 5, trans people are just overreacting. I mean, okay, some of us are. This is the internet. Overreactions are a thing that happens. I guess what I should say is that not all of us are overreacting. I want to draw your attention to this article right here, where Hagrid says that trans people are just looking for an excuse to get offended. Lovely, charming. It's not even that this is a bad take. This is just a really weird take. Is that really what you think this is about? That we just like being offended? I'm reminded of the scene in Pulp Fiction where John Travolta tells Uma Thurman, "Promise you won't be offended." And Uma Thurman responds with something to the effect of, "My response is gonna be my response. If I am offended by what you say, I'm gonna be offended." And sure enough, John Travolta goes on to say something offensive, and she is offended, but they continue to have a conversation and a lovely evening until she overdoses on heroin. Not relevant. Moving on. The problem here isn't whether or not people are overreacting, which again, the internet, yeah. Violence is bad. Threats of violence are bad. No violence, bad. Bad violence, always bad. There is a lot of garbage that gender diverse people have to put up with on a regular basis. And yeah, some of us are pretty sensitive and frankly salty about it. This is not at all unreasonable. I want to draw your attention here to the amount of violence that trans people have to put up with. And here is how we are depicted in a lot of media. I highly recommend that you check out the Netflix series Disclosure for a really good idea of how we are portrayed to the general public on a very regular basis. We put up with a lot. So, apparently you can't make a list debunking trans myths without addressing the following. Here goes. So, direct quote from some asshole. "I want trans women to be safe. Ah. At the same time, I do not want to make natal girls and women less safe. When you throw open the doors of bathrooms and changing rooms to any man who believes or feels he's a woman, then you open the door to any and all men who wish to come inside. That is the simple truth." Is it? Is it really? Men dressing as women to sneak into women's spaces is not a thing that happens outside of cartoons. And even if it happens, gender identity has certainly never been used as a legal defense. And even if that was the case, it's not appropriate to hold members of the gender diverse community accountable for something that has nothing to do with us when we are far more likely to be the victims of violence than the perpetrators thereof. Gah! I maintain throughout that you are entitled to your opinions. You are entitled to believe or disbelieve. You can agree or disagree with me, and certainly feel free to criticize and critique what you have seen here. If you think that I am off base about something, I am open to that. Keep it civil, keep it concise, cite your sources, please. Very important. And if you watch this video, thank you so much. If you liked it, great. Click the like button, I guess. I may or may not make more videos, but to all of you, I love you and take care.